The final leg of our journey began with a visit to the small city of St. Asaph. St. Asaph, or Llanelwy, lies a few minutes' drive up the Vale of Clwyd to the south of Prestatyn. It is home to what is thought to be the smallest cathedral in all of Britain. Not only this, but Lawrence the Cathedral Licker is yet to make a visit. Mrs. Soup and I could not resist. The cathedral church has its roots sometime in the 6th century, with a church built either to St. Kentigern, St. Elwy, or St. Asa. Much of that church was destroyed during the rebellion of Owain Glyndŵr in the early 1400s. Most of the present building dates to the time of Henry VII. Though modest in size, the contents of this cathedral reveal its status. Here is a grand iron box, not unlike that which we saw in Exeter. Here is a memorial to a local hero, the very man who infamously asked, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume?" And the cathedral is bold in its use of modern art to reinterpret tenets of faith. We were exploring the cathedral as they were setting up for an evening of music as part of an international music festival. Indeed, I attended concerts here in high school. Again, though the building may be small, the cathedral lives large. The modest and the impressive meet again in this Spanish Madonna and Child, supposedly washed up from the Spanish Armada. As we entered the eastern end of the cathedral, it was hard to pick out any features which would not be at home in a more massive, more impressive building. St. Asaph Cathedral may be small, but it is positively crammed with personality and character. This brimming character is demonstrated by a plaque just outside the church which describes St. Asaph as a city in 1887. People here have been convinced of a grand city status for many years, though it was only technically granted this year during the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Not a minute too soon for the residents of St. Asaph. The following day we found ourselves at Erddig House, near Wrexham. This property dates to the 1700s and is frequently voted one of Britain's most important stately homes. For many people, once you've seen a stately home on a hot bank holiday weekend, you've seen them all, but Erddig truly is different. This is hinted at by the rather charming blessing written above the main corridor in the servants' quarters. As you explore further, you begin to notice portraits on the wall, but these aren't pictures of wealthy people. These are in fact depictions of the house staff of Erddig Hall. Each portrait encompasses a humorous and rather affectionate poem describing the member of staff. And as time went on, technologies changed, photography came to be the medium by which Erddig House recorded its staff through the ages. This hall and its contents passed to the National Trust in the early 1970s. The most recent occupant of the house had been reduced to living in one room, moving furniture, books and other objects around constantly to try and avoid the leaking roofs. This led to the contents of the house being preserved in a sort of stasis, and features such as the blue glass fire-retardant grenades outside bedroom doors survived. As did my personal favourite object in the whole house, found in the bathroom. It's actually an early shower. In truth, the years of damp had left a slightly musty atmosphere in the house, and we were very grateful of some fresh air as we passed through the gardens on our way to the stable block. In the stables, Mrs. Soup and I found ourselves reflecting upon how the last occupant of the house must have felt about his family's legacy. It sounds like he had a love-hate relationship with all of this stuff. I took a moment to take a photo of one of the last bilingual signs we'll be seeing for a while, and Mrs. Soup learned probably the most vital bit of Welsh she will ever learn. She does love her tea. The final destination of historic interest on our journey was Manchester. We arrived during the week of the Labour Party conference, with lots of oily political types swanning around and protesters stalking them. But of particular interest is the area by the docks, where the new Media City is being built, the new home of the BBC, and also the Imperial War Museum North. Far from glorifying war, the museum set out to explore how war shapes lives, in particular the past 100 years for the United Kingdom. Mrs. Soup was pleased that there was a focus on the role of women which wasn't patronising. They examined the home front, but also the role of women in combat throughout the 20th century. More recent conflict was also examined. Here a flag from Ground Zero, 9/11. Here we see a fascinating welcome to US troops during the Second World War. I've never seen the US and UK flags combined in such a way. The museum examined bizarre memorabilia of war, here key members of the Nazi Party and other bits and bobs which they used as propaganda, forwarding a nationalistic agenda. And of course the simplest of signs reflecting that dark agenda, Jews will not be served here. Along with their ID cards, many of these people died in concentration camps. Another section of the museum asked what shapes our impressions of war, from toys and board games to posters. Everybody makes use of propaganda. I particularly liked this poster. Extravagant dress is worse than bad form. And here a warning against sleeping around with us diseased British folk. I found many of the quotes highlighted on the walls of the museum to be particularly powerful, reminding us of the brutality of combat, but also that war strips us of glory. Far from being a glorious endeavour, it is inhumane. We were reminded of continuing conflict, here the remains of a car from Baghdad, 2007, but also that there's always hope. Here, early work on prosthetics, giving people hope after horrible injuries. Ultimately, the Imperial War Museum does an excellent job at reminding us that war is a cultural event, for better or worse, and it asks some important and provocative questions about our future. From Manchester, Mrs. Soup and I headed home, and before we knew it, we were back at Archeosoup Towers. Thus ended our 2-week tour of Britain.